Hello and welcome to episode 65 of Linux After Dark. I'm Joe.
I'm Chris.
I'm Carrie.
And I'm Dalton.
Welcome back, chaps. The other day, I was talking to two people about my age, and they told me that their kids, who were sort of tween to early teens, let's just say, had demanded CD players. And I said, what? Don't they have Spotify and stuff? Oh yeah, they've got that as well, but they wanted CD players. Okay. And that reminded me of my niece, who is just about an adult, and she is into disposable cameras, like analog cameras. I don't know why disposable and why she doesn't buy a proper one, but that's the youth of today. But that made me think, what's old is new again. Retro stuff seems to be in fashion. And that got me thinking, what are we due for in the Linux and open source world that's retro and about to come back?
Well, you know, I'd say that MIT's ELIZA is about to come back, that natural language model thing from the 60s. I think that's going to be real in this year.
Yeah, that's going to get popular any time now. I was thinking more along the lines of on-prem, maybe. Is that due for a comeback? Are people going to realize that the cloud is really, really expensive and maybe it's worth buying your own servers and running your own stuff?
Well, on-prem is sort of making a comeback in as much as there are regulators that require it and stuff, but that's one thing. But there have been a real spate of companies moving back to on-prem and making a really, really big stink about it recently. So the one that springs to mind for me is Basecamp by 37 Signals, and that company made a big stink in the middle of last year about moving everything back to their on-prem data centers and how they were going to save $1.5 million a year by owning their own hardware and running it on-prem and not renting it from AWS, which on one hand means they were probably using the cloud wrong and just using it to run VMs. But on the other hand, I see a resurgence of it in other areas as well. There are certainly people who are biasing towards that kind of older skill set of owning their own stuff and running it.
Yeah, it does feel like there's a bubble that has to burst as well with the GPU is really fashionable in that context. But I feel like surely it's running away. And like with other kind of bubbles, sometimes involving GPUs with cryptocurrency mining, all it takes is for the configuration of things to shift. And suddenly everyone wants to offload that hardware or turn it off. It's surely using loads of electricity. There's just so many things playing into that I feel like it is going to pop rather than gradually slow down. It feels so familiar from previous times, from the dot-com bubble onwards, of excitement, and then it just explodes.
So what you're saying is your definite qualified financial advice is short sell NVIDIA. Linux After Dark is not financial advice. I don't know, man. I think the hype around this one is going to continue for a long time.
Yeah, possibly. But I just wonder if other factors are going to play in. The world is melting, for example. It feels like sitting on a horse that's slightly out of control and we're going to fall off and smash our heads, to me.
Yeah.
I do think when you talk about younger generations, people always say owning things is bad and, you know, capitalism and possessions and everything. But when I was younger, the feeling of tangibly touching the things that you decided to buy, like CDs, is just not something you get when it's so easy to have the entire catalogue of music you could think of at your fingertips. And I can see why people would be attracted to that rather than just have everything ephemeral.
Well, I suppose paralysis of choice. If you've got Spotify or YouTube or just the internet, what are you going to listen to music-wise? There's every song ever made pretty much. Whereas if you've got 10 CDs, you're actually going to listen to 10 CDs and appreciate the music that's on them.
And appreciate the thought that goes into putting the album in the correct order so the songs tell some kind of story rather than just listening to your top 50 on Spotify or whatever.
Mm.
But I think in terms of that, subscription services are on a massive decline, as far as I can tell. And people owning and buying DVDs or Blu-rays or whatever seems to be coming back.
Yeah, buying them. Yeah.
Yes, buying them, definitely.
Buying them using open source software such as Transmission, for example.
Mine, unfortunately, all disappeared in a house fire. I don't know what happened.
Oh, well. Good job you had backups.
Yeah, I did, yeah, thankfully. They've all got weird names, but they are backed up. But yeah, we cancelled all of our streaming services recently, mainly because we were sick of being nickel and dimed by companies. We started off with just Netflix, and then we added Prime, and then we added Disney Plus, and then we added Apple TV. And before we knew it, we were paying the best part of 100 quid a month on random streaming services by the time you include Spotify.
Mm. And Amazon pulled that bait and switch recently where it was like, right, Amazon Video has now got ads in it unless you pay us more. Not like, hey, you can pay us less and we'll give you ads.
Yeah, they all seem to be in a state of panic about revenue. Disney, I don't subscribe to Disney, but a couple of my friends do. And they've shown me the price rises. They just keep whacking the prices up. And it just stinks of desperation. And it's not working. Like, whatever tactic they go for, Netflix reducing account sharing, or Amazon asking you to pay again to get rid of ads like you said, Joe, or Disney just purely whacking the prices up. It's backfiring, surely.
Yeah, the Disney one was particularly egregious because I think we started off paying about 6 quid a month and eventually ended up paying about 17 quid a month. It was absolutely ridiculous. And all the time, less and less content was on there. And yeah, it's just ridiculous. I just can't see that people will continue to pay into it.
What about from a FOSS point of view, though? That's what this is supposed to be about. I thought, are we due for people going back to an idea of only trusting software from your distro and just accepting that updates are going to be slow in terms of features?
I don't know, Chris, you're the Debian user. Why don't you tell us?
Well, the thing is, I've fallen into a model which seems to be quite popular since Bookworm came out. There's a convergence of factors which I think make it a bit more attractive. The fact that the default download has the non-free firmware in it means that you can boot it on most machines and it works. It's fairly trivial to have the non-free repositories, and it does work quite smoothly out of the box. But I do feel like a lot of people are using Flatpak for user space applications. So that thing seems really difficult to me. Everyone just seems to get into an argument and invent a new thing on that front. I don't think that's going to fall apart, but there doesn't seem to be converged effort necessarily. Flatpak seems to have got a lot of momentum, but then people will say, oh, that's crap. You should use Nix. You should use containers. You should go for the UBlue approach to things. It feels very scattered, but I don't know whether we would go back to just the distribution model, because people that package software sometimes get frustrated with that. I think that's why these other packaging formats have started to emerge. You know, there are some projects which have tried to stop distributions from packaging in their repositories and only try to distribute their application through some kind of supposed universal packaging format. As a Debian user, a lot of the stuff is available in the repositories, but I choose to install very little from apt, actually, especially web browsers, things that get frequent updates. I know that there's Firefox ESR and an external repository for Chrome and everything, but that's the model that I've landed on. So I like that slow progress, but I'm not fully I'm not getting anything from outside of the Debian repositories or anything.
Okay, this episode is sponsored by people who support us with PayPal and Patreon. Go to linuxafterdark.net/support for details of how you can support us too. Linux After Dark is part of the Late Night Linux family, which means that for $10 a month on Patreon, you can get access to an RSS feed that contains all the Late Night Linux family shows without adverts like this. There's also an option to get just this show ad-free for $5 a month. Some of the episodes are even released a day or so early for Patreon supporters. So if you like what we do and can afford it, it would be great if you could support us at linuxafterdark.net/support. What about companies going back to having websites instead of apps? Is that ever going to happen?
I really, really hope so, because the number of apps I have installed on my phone now is ridiculous.
Ditto.
I need a loyalty card to go to IKEA and get a free coffee, and I need an app to have the loyalty card. Why do I need that? It's just a barcode. You could render that as a JPEG in the website. Come on. Just do it.
Yeah, it's like I don't install the Amazon app, for example. I just use the website for that. I mean, I use just the website for anything I possibly can.
Yeah, I do where it's at all possible. There's just a bunch of places that still, for whatever reason, say, you need to use our app, which I know full well in a lot of cases is just a web wrapper. But I really hope that places just move to more progressive web apps that I can get on my phone or on my laptop or wherever, and I stop having to install things. And I kind of get it, and I can forgive it for things like iPlayer, where there's DRM and things that maybe doesn't work in a mobile browser engine quite as well as it does in their app. But needing an app to get a discount on a coffee is just a step too far for me. I'll just pay more.
Well, BBC Sounds, music, radio, podcasts, that I do through the browser because I refuse to install their app. I don't care how many times they ask me to install it. No, I'm using the bloody website.
Do you know the really annoying one I had the other day was I went to a McDonald's drive-thru and I opened the car window and she said, "Are you ordering with the app today?" No, I'm at a drive-thru. Why do I need to order with the app?
I'm here. You've just wasted more time asking me that question.
No, I'll have a cheeseburger, please.
I'm ordering with a person. That's you.
Exactly, right? Like, why would I go to the drive-thru with an app? It's ridiculous. And why do I need an app? It's a burger.
It's terrible. I'm looking at my phone here as you speak, Gary. I have 324 apps installed. And in Android now, it says 98 of them are unused. And every so often I get that notification because the default now is for Android that they strip any permissions you've granted after a set amount of time. And then pop-up notification comes up saying X number of apps have had their permissions stripped. Click here to review. And it's always like 60 or something. It's like an untidy desk that I just can't be bothered to go through and work out. And even more annoyingly, I'll go back to one of those apps with the stripped permissions and have to sign in again. I'm like, well, I do use this, but just not often enough for you, fucking Google.
Are you happy now?
Why have I still got the Soundcore app installed? I'm looking now. So I bought a Soundcore Bluetooth speaker and used the app to set it up and didn't delete it. Why not? What is wrong with me?
I mean, you might update the firmware on it someday.
Maybe I should see about updating the firmware on it. I've never done that, so yeah.
Well, I got some headphones and was really hoping there'd be a firmware update because there's a bug in them, but no, it's been a year now. Still waiting.
For me, it's banking apps. On my phone, I have 6 apps for banks and credit cards. It's just too much.
That is the most painful thing for me. The bloody banking apps mean I can't use Lineage. And yeah, every single financial institution, I opened 2 savings accounts today, and that's another app for one of them to get and verify and make sure I don't lose the credentials on. And sometimes if you have those permissions stripped, you then have to phone them to prove who you are to get the fucking app set up because it won't let you.
Wow, that sounds awful.
Well, I was away traveling and had gotten signed out of the Barclays app. And I needed one of those PIN Sentry things to sign back in. So went into the bank and said, "Can I please use a PIN Sentry thing to sign back into the app?" And they said, "No, we can post you one." I just need to sign back into the app. I was about to go for 2 weeks away in Africa and clearly needed the banking app before I left. It was a nightmare. Anyway, I borrowed someone's in the office in the end, but the fact that I couldn't walk into the bank and use a device to sign back into my banking app was so infuriating.
I feel like none of that's actually going to get better, though. You know, all those things sound like things that are kind of stuck now.
No, we're going to have retro future. Things are going to go back to being good.
Do you think that instead we're going to see more people buying USB hard drives and maybe home server type boxes? I don't know if people will go that far, but at least not using Google Drive for everything or similar.
No.
Really?
No. People don't understand the concept of network storage anymore. People don't even understand the concept of a file system.
Yeah, exactly.
The biggest struggle I used to have with when I was supporting kind of residential IT and people just working from home on their own was getting them to back up to a hard drive or consider anything other than the cloud. And I would try and explain it, and you tie yourself in knots. You'd be like, you can't trust this magic box that you can't see to keep hold of your files, and you can't trust your laptop to always be there. And you've got a sync client, and they're like, yeah, that backs everything up. It's like, no, it syncs everything. That's a completely different thing than backing up and doing incremental snapshotted backups. And I would show them, it would usually be Windows, the integrated tool. get yourself a hard drive, plug it in, click and make sure that it's backing up. The next time I visited them 6 months later, it was in the same drawer, in the same place. They'd not touched it.
That is interesting because two things with my friends. For one, most of them do have a physical backup drive, and they aren't like super nerds or anything. They play games on PCs, but they only care about the PC for that far. It runs Discord and it runs Steam, and that's mostly all that it needs to do. So I disagree with all of you there. I think that might be a thing that comes back and we'll just never hear about it.
Maybe.
But the other thing is, I have friends who are distrustful of anti-cheat software to the point where some of them run a separate Windows install for their games that have anti-cheat.
Huh.
Wow. So what, they think it's snooping on them?
Well, it is. And also, yes.
They think it's snooping on more than just the game.
Yeah.
See, I think there is probably a slight difference, though, between the I built a PC and play games on it type people and other computer users like someone's mum. Those people are probably going to be the type of people who have a backup drive because they don't want to re-download their Steam library.
Yeah, but we're talking about people with style here. We're talking about the kids, man.
Yeah, but when I think of the kids, I think of normal non-IT people who have a console to play games.
Yeah, constantly on their iPhone and Snapchat and...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, or even if I think of my sister who's in her mid-20s, she doesn't do any of this stuff. She's a nursery teacher and she just takes photos on her phone and boots the computer up once in a while to fill in a form or play The Sims. I think that's probably what most people do at this point.
And even that is too damn much because computers suck.
All right. How about this for a retro idea that is due for a comeback? Shipping software that actually works properly instead of relying on updates.
Nah.
Not happening, is it?
My biggest bugbear is I wish they'd stop fucking moving the furniture around and focus on the actual fucking product. Slack, for example, which we use at work, has its pluses and minuses, but fuck off. Why have you moved my avatar from top left to bottom left? No one cared about that. Everyone was used to where it was. Just stop it from crashing when it has a bug. Stop fucking moving everything around because then you can say you've moved everything around in meetings. It fucking does my head in.
Do you know the worst thing about that Slack update for me is that I'm in about 6 Slack workspaces and they all used to be down the left with a little number on telling me how many messages I had in any of the given Slack workspaces. Now I have to click into a menu to see the workspaces that I'm in.
Oh.
That's 2 extra clicks and I can't see at a glance if I've got messages in a particular workspace. Great, thanks.
And they don't listen, Gary. That's the thing. There are loads of threads open with Slack complaining, to which they're like, we are not reverting this. And some people even manage to unpack the app and patch it themselves. And then they shut that off. Like, they don't care. They just want progress reports. Oh.
Yeah, but they don't care because your employer's still going to pay them for the Slack enterprise license every month if you like it or not.
Yes, and they have your messages from before 3 months ago unless you pay. And oh God, fucking messaging systems. Write your fucking emails in and tell us we shouldn't be using a proprietary platform. Go ahead. I don't mind. But, that's not my decision to make, is it? Come on. I'm not going to get centralized Office to start running Matrix and bridge things. Like, you fight that fucking battle for me.
I think it's even more sinister than web-based platforms like Slack, though. The most annoying one for me is Office suites. Office 97 was perfect, and it did everything I could ever expect an Office suite to do.
Boomer FM for IT.
But it's just gotten progressively worse to the point where I feel like they're moving things for the sake of it now. So we recently at work moved from Office 2019 or something to Office 2022. I don't know what the version numbers are at this point. And for some reason, they've moved things that were in dialog boxes to the right-hand side of the screen in a sidebar thing. Why? What's wrong with the dialog box?
I'm so glad that I'm the boss and the boss of the IT department of my Cockamamie operation, so I can just use LibreOffice as Ubuntu LTS that just never changes.
Well, again, LibreOffice, exact same user paradigm as Office 97, and it works perfectly. Leave it alone.
I don't get which direction they come at it from, though. Seriously, is that they don't have enough work to do. And they're like, shit. There's a deadline. Move this here, move that there. I saw this on an app I ordered my toilet paper with this morning. Just copy that and ship it. Or are they genuinely running focus groups where they break things and people are like, yeah, I love that you've broken this. He loves that we've broken this. Let's ship that. I don't understand.
Dalton, you pretend to be a developer sometimes. Answer the question. Why do things change for the sake of change?
I don't know anything about web development, and I haven't done desktop development in years.
Is it because you got sick of being asked to change things for no reason? Is that why you stopped? Well, I have one thing that should definitely make a comeback soon. Compiz. Compiz is great. Let's just bring back the spinning cube and all of that stuff.
Right, well, we'd better wrap it up then. Do let us know what you think is due for a comeback. You can email us show@linuxafterdark.net. We'll be back in a couple of weeks, but until then, I've been Joe.
I've been Chris.
I've been Gary.
And I remember Windows 98.
See you later.